Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video I'd like to discuss the very damaging act on the part of Boris Johnson in preventing the Intelligence and Security Committee from setting up at all in order to prevent the release of a report into Russian interference in order to protect his sorry arse. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, that Boris Johnson was considered a security risk by both MI5 and MI6 due to his links with Russians close to Vladimir Putin is well documented. We've also seen the Conservatives having to register huge donations to the party from some of those well-connected Russians living in London, exactly coinciding with acts by Boris Johnson which pleased the Kremlin, such as suppressing the report into Russian interference in British public polls, including the Brexit referendum and elections. Literally a day or two after he announced that he would not be releasing that report before the general election, he was thrown quite a lot of money. Now, to cast your minds back to last autumn, when the report was completed and passed by the Cabinet Office, that means it did not contain any sensitive security information that could be harmful to the state if published. Obviously, we understand with a document like this, it needs to be cleared by the security services. It had been. It then went to the Prime Minister's office. Now, the Prime Minister is not an expert and cannot actually scrutinise a report like this. It's just a formality. They're supposed to just ask their aides, you know, has this all been cleared? Is it fine to be released? To which they say yes. And they sign it off and it goes back to the committee who then publish it. But on this occasion, the report went to the Prime Minister's office from whence it never returned. And I remember at the time people asking me if I thought he was just sitting on it until after the general election and well then it would be released and then we would see. But there was a suggestion at the time that the report was so damaging for Boris Johnson that he would never want it releasing. The people involved in the report who know what's in the report wanted it releasing very, very badly. In other words, whatever is in this report is serious. This report, unlike what Boris Johnson's saying, Boris Johnson did a typical Trumpian act and went, oh, it doesn't say there's anything found at all. It's just a report. There's no real conclusions in it. That is not the case. We know that's not the case because the people who have read it are saying this is serious. Now, in theory, he wasn't supposed to be in a position to block it forever. That he could do so until after the general election was a disgrace in itself. But, I mean, you expect no better from this traitor to his own country, quite frankly. But surely it should have been released by now. You know, back in the time, you know, last November, well, December really. At that time, we really shouldn't have supposed that it would still be awaiting release 6 months later, but here we are. And I thought at the time that he will absolutely seek to make the suppression permanent, because if it is as serious as some people are saying, he will not want this release at any time, because even if he got a general election won out of suppressing it, he personally, he's only interested in power. You know, if it's really damaging, then maybe the party would jettison him as leader if it were released. And he is well on the way to permanently suppressing it. It's not impossible to permanently keep a lid on it, because although the report has been cleared, it was cleared before the election, and it's supposed to be published by the Intelligence and Security Committee, or the Security Intelligence Committee. I forget which way around it is at times. But basically what this is, this committee is a select committee of cross-party MPs who deal with, unsurprisingly, intelligence and security. And so why hasn't it been published 6 months later? In short, because this committee doesn't exist. Not anymore. Because when a general election is called, Parliament is dissolved. That means there are no MPs. They don't exist. There are no MPs. There's still a government, but those government ministers are, I mean, not all government ministers are MPs anyway. You don't have to be elected to government, but they're not MPs anymore either. So as a result, you also have no select committees, because select committees are formed from MPs. The elected House of Parliament, the House of Commons, doesn't really exist while Parliament is dissolved. Now, after the election, the select committees are supposed to reform from, some may be the same MPs, some may be different MPs. Boris Johnson delayed a number of such committees from forming. He really did slow down their progress quite a lot, and also planted key allies into the lead positions in a number of influential committees as well. He can't appoint the chairs in all of them, but he gets a bit of a say, which again is a bit naughty, really. Now, the plan, as seemed to be revealed a few months ago, I think back in March from memory, was that he would make one of his supporters, a nice pliant MP who would do exactly what he was told, the head of the Intelligence and Security Committee, with the aim of, I mean, there'd be no justification for the report going back to them and them saying, oh no, we don't want to release it. It has to be released. But what they could do is say, right, well, we're a new committee now. We'd like to review it ourselves. And what they could have done was to just tear up the report. This is the plan. Tear up the report completely and start again. Write a new one that ignores all the evidence presented to the previous committee. And this would not only have the benefit of taking much more time. I mean, you could potentially take years over this, but would remove all the references to his kowtowing to an unfriendly foreign government. And also, I mean, there's a lot of emphasis placed on what might be said about Boris Johnson in this report. But what about Dominic Cummings as well? Less well known potentially is that he spent a few years when he was younger living in Moscow, and it was alleged that he built up a network of contacts of those with links to the Kremlin there as well. And you know, so they'd want to erase all of that. And Boris Johnson has the nerve to moan at Black Lives Matter protesters for wanting to erase history. But here we are, 6 months on, a full half year later from the general election, and much longer, well, significantly longer than that since the report was written, and the committee has still not formed. Even though Johnson had a plan, he still delayed the formation of this group. And this is the last committee to be formed. Like I said, he delayed a number of them, but the rest have been formed as far as can be told. All the others are formed. This is the last one to form. Now, that in itself makes it deeply suspicious. And it goes without saying that as far as I can tell, this is unprecedented. It's certainly unusual. I mean, there's no reason for a committee to take 6 months after a general election to form. There's no reason for that at all. You can understand they don't all form at the same time because some MPs want to be in this particular committee, and maybe they don't get into that, or I'll be in that committee, a bit of jiggery poker, but 6 months later it should be done. That Boris Johnson, a man that even our own security services considered a security risk, just when he was being appointed Foreign Secretary, a security risk to the UK, in the judgment of our own security services, for him to not only be head of government, but even to be allowed to manipulate events to suppress this report is a major weakness in our system, of course. But there is also another problem with this, because the role of the committee is not just to expose security threats in government. Frankly, those aren't even supposed to be a thing. This committee has statutory oversight over our intelligence services and personnel. As well as the report into Russian interference, it was also investigating security issues regarding a whole host of potential threats to the UK. In China, for example, right-wing terrorism, GCHQ procurement even, making sure like any select committee, making sure that taxpayer money is being spent properly. They scrutinise that. At the moment, that's not happening. Because this committee has not formed, none of that is happening. We have not got oversight over our intelligence and security operations. The UK is creating self-inflicted security problems, security threats to the state that we are not keeping our eye on, which have the potential, of course, to be exploited by those without our best interests at heart, which is quite a lot of the world, you would think. But coming back to the committee, and it is an interesting question, isn't it, to ask, why is it still not formed? Because if Boris Johnson intends to pressure the committee into rewriting the report anyway, and he had a plan to do so, what's changed? Was the plan not going well? You know, there was a report, I remember at the time, of him planning on appointing Chris Grayling as the chair of the committee. This guy is well known as a cock-up merchant from his time as a cabinet minister in a couple of departments at least. And let's be honest, to stand out as being particularly incompetent with the current luminaries of Tory government is something special. Does Johnson not really trust anyone in the role? Maybe. It has to be pointed out, he did install an MP by the name of Bernard Jenkin, who is a close ally of Boris Johnson, to the chair of the Liaison Committee. Now, the Liaison Committee is the select committee that specifically scrutinises the Prime Minister. So he appointed an ally so that when he had to attend the Liaison Committee meetings, he'd get an easy ride of it. And it turned out that that appointment didn't stop him being asked some awkward questions when they did get hold of him. So maybe he thinks to himself, well, how much control can I really even get over this committee? Perhaps he fears that he can never really get on top of it, and in order to permanently bury the Russian report that actually needs no work, it just needs its release authorising. In fact, as soon as this committee assembles, the first thing people will be calling for is for them to just release it. That is the first order of business. And if Boris Johnson is a little bit worried, it then begs the question as to how much longer can he prevent the formation of this committee before even his own backbenchers start to question it. But there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.